that allows us to talk without it going there.
Janet said she might watch. She's probably sleeping already. Hopefully that didn't go out. Can't say much. I crashed between, say, 4:30 and by the time she got home, I was crashed myself, so...
All right. Hey, y'all, Pastor Emil here with another episode of Sweet Jesus. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter. Great to be with you. Got Scott back here. We are looking at parables. We didn't make it last week. The National Day of Prayer was on Thursday, and this whole setup got taken down to be used, or at least part of it was used for broadcasting that. Hopefully you were able to get a chance to join us somehow, either during the event or later. But we're back at it. We're back in Matthew 13, looking at verses 31 through 33. And if you got something sweet, some ice cream, some cupcakes or donuts or whatever. I had chocolate cake today.
Nice.
Your wife across at the CDC, she had quite the spread for Teacher Appreciation Day.
Nice.
And I should not have anything else to eat for the rest of the day. It was that good. But
I saw it advertised somewhere that a particularly popular donut place is giving kids one donut for every A on their report card. So I don't know if your kids get report cards, but
Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme?
Krispy Kreme.
Oh, they're giving out for A's. I mean, that's always been weird because it's like they don't trust a homeschool report card. If we filed an actual report card, I mean, we have grades on exams and quizzes and papers and whatever, but yeah, one of the downsides to homeschooling, at least for them.
No donuts for you.
We got to buy them. We just got to buy them. But I'm sure there's somebody out there that'll get a free donut if they bring their kid's report card and get an A. They'll get a Krispy Kreme donut. So that's one way to indulge in the sweetness. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Donuts are sweet, but Jesus, of course, is far sweeter. Let's take a look at, this is a really short section. The mustard seed and the leaven is the heading we've got here. Jesus put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed that a man took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is larger than all the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches." He told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour, till it was all leavened." The word of the Lord. So what gets your attention when you look at this, or what kind of questions come to mind when you read this?
Well, kind of something kind of silly is like I didn't know that much about a mustard seed and the what kind of plant it grew into, but it says it's one of the largest in the gardens, right? I guess it was. I don't know. Is that true, or is that just in the instance of this story, parable? So
it's there's some debate. I don't know about debate, but we get the impression like it's this enormous thing, and we think like redwood.
Right.
It's
No.
not that.
No.
Right? It's not a redwood, but it is a large plant for a garden or a tree. Essentially, It becomes kind of like a tree. And there's a interesting thing here is that a tree larger than all the garden plants and becomes a tree so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. And I think most folks that know stuff about the Bible look at this as a reference, Jesus referencing a prophecy in Ezekiel. So in Ezekiel 17, I think starting in verse 22 here, thus says the Lord God, I myself will take a sprig from the lofty top of the cedar and will set it out. I will break off from the topmost of its young twigs a tender one, and I myself will plant it on a high and lofty mountain. On the mountain height of Israel will I plant it, that it may bear branches and produce fruit and become a noble cedar. And under it will dwell every kind of bird. In the shade of the branches, birds of every sort will nest. And all the trees of the field shall know that I am the Lord. I bring low the high tree and make high the low tree, dry up the green tree and make the dry tree flourish. I am the Lord, I have spoken. And this is pretty widely accepted to be kind of like ultimately all nations, right? This is Abraham. We were talking briefly before we got started here. Abraham, God says, in you, through you, all nations are going to be blessed. I'm going to bless you, and then through you, all the nations of the world. And I think that's what's going on in Ezekiel. And that's what Jesus is essentially saying. You've got this little thing, a seed. It's going to turn into this big tree, maybe not a redwood or a cedar, but a big enough tree that all different birds are going to come. The birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. So,
And I think symbolically, a seed is a symbol of potential, right? So it has everything in it that it needs to become a tree or to become whatever it is, whatever plant it is. It has everything in it, but it needs to be, I guess, planted and watered. And so
that's a good point. I don't think I thought about that, but it's true. The seed that's been planted has everything that it needs, and the seed of the kingdom of heaven, has all that it needs, and it's just this takes time.
Yeah, it doesn't mention being watered or tended to or anything in this, but
I think
it's kind of implied.
It's sort of
maybe.
I think the inevitability,
Yeah.
right? Well, because it doesn't talk about any of that stuff, it's just this inevitability, which I think is part of maybe whether it's intentionally here or not. Certainly, I do think it is the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven. There's an inevitability to it, right? We are moving towards this culmination, the success, the victory of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is certain. It's not in doubt. It's going to happen. Whatever happens in the meantime, the watering, the sunlight, all the other aspects of it, the fertilizing, and I guess that's there. But whatever the case is,
it is being planted. We had that other parable about the seeds being thrown about and different soil, but this is definitely being planted in his garden, sowed in his field, and then it's the largest plant in the garden. So I guess that could imply that you're not just going to throw a seed and then not water it, or if it's in your garden, it's not a haphazard type of situation. But I guess the potential to grow so big and be so inviting to the birds. I thought when you were talking about the birds, I thought you were going to say some reference to Noah. Some of the the birds flew and landed, and it was a good place to be. And then they brought a piece back or something. I don't know. I didn't know I never heard of the Ezekiel reference, I guess, but
that all these different birds. All the nations are going to be gathering there. And it all starts from something small. I think that's actually what unites these two in particular, is it's the small things. It's not the big things. It's the inevitability of the seed in the garden, but also just this subtle kind of sneaks up on you kind of way. That's the leaven, right? You put a little yeast in, little leaven in, and all of a sudden it's taking over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably the driving, like the main thing driving both of these, is that we're often, you remember All, the detergent All?
Mm-hmm.
They used to have like a thing, All Small and Mighty. So they came out with these smaller containers, and you only had to put a little bit in, but it did what it needed to do. So small and mighty. This is, I would say, small is mighty. Small is the way of the kingdom. And there are I think there are other spots where stuff like this idea kind of comes up. Certainly Jesus' teaching is not, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God, right? We constantly want the big, flashy success and achievements, the power and influence and wealth and whatever. But then that's not, Jesus didn't go for the big and the flashy and the, right?
Mm-hmm.
He went small. And small ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's a baseball term. It's a basketball term, I think. It's not football, maybe.
Yeah, no.
But the idea that when you just take care of the simple, small, little things, the big things kind of take care of themselves. Right? Does that sound fair? I don't know.
It reminds me of when you hear a story from somebody who becomes, kind of wildly successful, and then they'll relay something back to when they were younger, possibly, or somewhere along in their life, and there was somebody who did like this, what seemed to be like a small thing, but it was whatever that deed was, it triggered, changed their life. That.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to spend some time thinking about that, but there aren't a lot of big things jumping at me, but that is a very common theme. Just one person, one encouraging word that keeps you going and helps you believe that. Actually, the Tim Tebow interview you were talking about earlier, before we got on here, I think maybe it was in like the opening where they had a bunch of different little clips they showed. There's Jordan Peterson and Tim Tebow doing a podcast interview. And he said something about like how his parents told him that God had a plan for him or something. And he's like, it's amazing what you can do when you believe God has a plan for you, or when you keep telling people that God has a plan for them. God wants to use them for great things. Like that small thing is now Tim Tebow and his foundation and all this other stuff.
Right. Yeah, he said, basically they told him that almost every day, to where he, yeah.
And, it's like, as a parent, as a spouse, I get all wrapped up in all these big plans and great crazy ideas. Here's how we're gonna save the church, or here's how we're gonna do this great big thing. But really, it's like
Emil Grederson saves the world. Film at 11
with Scott Lewis in the Batmobile.
That's right.
But it's just the daily tasks. It's it's like just being kind to your spouse. It's loving your kids and helping them in the things that they need help with every day, the daily disciplines, being a good example, being encouraging, having those encouraging words, which I think I'm actually pretty terrible at.
Mm-hmm.
I find things that are wrong too easily.
I got that habit myself.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a man thing, a male thing.
I think it probably is somewhat that, yeah. But
It's gonna be my excuse for right now.
yeah, blame it on my DNA.
That's it.
Those pesky XY.
Yeah,
right?
everybody's
It's the
talking
Y.
about. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the Y. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, yeah, well, because XX is female, XY is male, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong. Somebody tell me if I'm an idiot.
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I was gonna go into the having Costello there. Why? I don't know.
Third base.
Exactly. And then we quickly changed the subject so we're not blaming ourselves for anything.
But it's the small things. Or Michael Jordan. The guy took like 500 free throws every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because what makes someone great? Excellence at the most basic, fundamental thing.
Mm-hmm.
The small things. John Wooden, college basketball, famous college basketball coach, UCLA, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a book all about basically the fundamentals. It's all about practicing the fundamentals, getting these little things right, and not just right, but like natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's second nature. So you just do these things. You're just amazing at the things that matter the most all the time. And then that's what creates opportunities for the flashy things.
Mm-hmm.
With our kids, we homeschool our kids, kind of mentioned that. But we've approached it from this classical model kind of thing. I don't know how, I'm sure there are other people that are taking it way more seriously as far as emphasizing that. But one of the things about classical education is that it's like you master the most basic things. You master the fundamental. Like you should be able to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division in your sleep before you try to do something more complicated. Because if you can't do that, then you can't do the complicated stuff because you'll be spending forever drawing boxes to solve 2 + 2 or something, like, wait a second, what? But that's kind of what I think about when I think about this verse here.
I know
these verses.
Gosh, how many years ago was it? I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, LSU football. They've only had, over the course of at least as long as I've followed them, maybe a handful of receivers that have come out of the program. That's Tennessee also towards the game of football because they throw a lot more now than they used to. But there was, when they won the year or maybe the year preceding the national championship or two, a particular coach came in, and I don't remember which one, and they learned some techniques for just strengthening their hands to catch the ball. And then it seems like ever since then, the receivers are just being drafted every year in the first round or second round of football, so just a little thing like some exercise to make strong hands to catch a ball,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, my kids swim, and it's like, you think it's all about muscles, but obviously you got to have strength. That's an important part of swimming, but it's also just how you move through the water in the most subtle ways, where you put your hands, how you pull, how you turn or don't turn, and
that would definitely be something you'd want just to be second nature, right? When you're
Yeah.
swimming, you don't want to be thinking, okay, now I got to put my hand right here. Now I got to put my hand. You'd be doing that hundreds of times down and back, you know, if you're thinking about it every time.
Well, but that's why they say that if you miss one day, it's like it takes 3 days to make it up.
Mm.
Because you're repeating that, just going down the length of the pool, I don't know, 100 times, just maybe not. I'm sure they pull more water than I do. Probably takes me like 1,000. Like I'm drowning.
Well, when you doggy paddle, you know, I guess so.
But all these little things that we miss, opportunities we miss. I'm missing opportunities all the time. But back up just a minute here. The kingdom of heaven is like. So my kids were in the other room here earlier, and I read this to them. I said, "Hey, what do you think about when you hear this? What questions do you have?" And I don't know what they said exactly, but we got caught up in this whole kingdom of heaven idea, which is actually, it makes sense that we got stuck on it because, well, what is the kingdom of heaven? And they're immediately thinking, oh, it's like a place. Like you go to a place, and I'm not sure that's really what it is. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's not. It's more than that. It is that, but it's not that.
Well, didn't Jesus say the kingdom of heaven is in your heart or
in your midst,
or within you?
In your midst? Yeah, it's you plural, I think, is really, so people, there are a lot of people that emphasize the you part, but I think it's actually plural, in your midst, plural.
Okay.
That's two ways of translating it. But yeah, it's here. It's not a place, it's a thing, it's an activity. So the word kingdom, they have these words, all languages have these words where like you take a word and the root word kind of means each of these different aspects of one kind of thing. So like in the Greek, the root word for the person, the place, and the activity is all kind of the same thing. But in English, you have a king who has a kingdom, but what does a king do? Kinging?
Yeah. He rules.
Only if we play checkers.
Right.
So yeah, he rules, he reigns. So we don't have that same. So the kingdom of heaven is actually more like the rule of heaven, the reign of heaven. It's a verbal idea. It's an activity. It's not a place. Like, hey, I can't wait to get to the kingdom of heaven, and I got to pass through the kingdom of Scott and the kingdom of Joe and the kingdom of whatever before I get there. But what is the place anyway? The place is where kingdom of Scott is the place where Scott, the king of Scott's kingdom, rules and reigns. Right? So they're all kind of like mixed up together. It's a little messy, but that's more the idea, I think, of what's going on here. And you think about the Lord's Prayer, right? What does the Lord's Prayer say? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Where?
On earth.
On earth, as it is in heaven. So it's saying, hey, how do we get the activity of God, the ways of God, the ruling and reigning of God as it is perfectly in heaven to manifest itself also on earth? Again, not a place, an activity. Which I think helps with this whole, the smallness idea. This is how it works in the kingdom of God. And if we just do this stuff, these little things, there is an inevitability of it taking over everything. And I think we've actually seen that. Like the things we fight about today and the things we worry about today are way low on the priority list of people 100 years ago. You know, I mean, it's just...
If they existed at all, right?
Yeah, it's just first world problems kind of is an idea, I think, there. But just the very fact that people just assume that the rights of the individual are important or that every person matters, and now we're just arguing over whether certain groups should get a more privileged or protected status.
Mm-hmm.
Not whether that's a thing, but who needs the most protection. That's not something that's just natural. It's natural to assume that there are some people that are more important than others. As the Tim Tebow podcast you're telling me about illustrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
The throwaway people. Well, so fill everybody in a little bit on the throwaway people with Tim Tebow.
Okay, so at some point in Tim Tebow's life, he was, and I'm not going to get this right, but exactly right. So pardon me, Tim Tebow, but he went to the Philippines, and he said the Philippines consist of hundreds of little islands or thousands of little islands. Anyway, they went to this one island where they're not... rest of the world doesn't come to very often. And so when visitors come to the island, they're very excited, and the rulers of the leaders of the island are excited, and they want to present a positive. They want you to see that their island is we have a great island, we have a great people. Well, he tells a story about I think he was giving his testimony, and people were listening, and then there was a group of boys that stopped listening and went away. And afterwards, it was bothering him to what was going on. And then one of the young boys came and grabbed him and took him to this like a hut type thing, if I'm describing it right. And inside the hut, there was this friend of theirs that had a disability, and he's like, well, Timothy was like confused. He's like, well, why are you in here? Why weren't you out with the, rest of the people? So, well, in their culture, people like that, or like, I don't know if cursed is the right word, or they're not people that they want to be presented because they want to look, magnificent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they hide away these people. So, and it struck him because, he was always taught, because of his own personal experiences and what happened to him when he was born and his mother was pregnant for him, that all people are important, they're significant. So this, young man, little boy, I'm not sure the age, but was in this hut, and he's like, no, he's the same as everybody else. God loves him just as much as he loves anybody. So anyway, did I tell it right?
Yeah,
close.
So there's a throwaway person.
Yeah. So.
And he used the word curse, I believe.
Did he? I couldn't remember.
Yeah. So most locations around the world that haven't been sort of evangelized, I guess, or where kind of Western culture, which is heavily influenced by Christianity, not that it always gets it all right, or that it has it perfect, or, is the only way of expressing sort of Christianity, but a lot of these cultural values, they are not everywhere else. They are not self-evident, even though that's what was the Declaration of Independence, right?
Yeah.
We believe these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Not really. Not really. And actually, there's an interesting, that's an indication of the change in culture. There's an interesting video. I don't want to get too far distracted with that, but it was something else. And I think Ben Franklin had this suggestion we have to change it to self-evident.
Mm.
It's actually not self-evident to all people on earth all the time. It's actually more self-evident that there are the winners and then the losers, and there are the privileged and the not. And here we are in a world that is heavily influenced by this idea that everybody is important and valuable and has a place in the world. And Tim Tebow is going around bringing that message to little kids in the Philippines who have their feet on backwards and are hidden out in corners, or have I don't know if are the kids' feet literally on backwards.
That's how he described it.
Yeah, that's what because I'm thinking like club feet. You know, one of my kids was born with a club foot, and you got to do some significant work to fix that. It can be fixed, but there are places all over the place. Africa, I'm sure the Philippines has something like this too, and other parts, less developed parts of the world where they don't have access to a lot of this medical technology and the ability to do some of these things. So all of that was just to say that it is the kingdom of heaven, the rule and reign of heaven, the ideas of heaven, the activity of heaven, looking out for those least type people is something that has taken over the world from 2,000 years ago. So
before that time, not so much, huh?
Yeah, no, they were in the first, when Jesus is saying these words, they were not thinking, oh yeah, that's right, everybody should have rights.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should be treated fairly. Everybody should be given an opportunity. No, that is not at all what it was. No way. And it never was. I don't think there's ever any. There's some interesting books too that maybe we've talked about them maybe or not. Like I think there's a book by a guy named Tom Holland, who is not the Spider-Man Tom Holland. He is another guy, a scholar, and he was an atheist, I believe, or agnostic or something, and either became a Christian or at least a theist in some sense based on his research. So he's an historian, I think.
Oh, yeah, that was that paper.
Dominion or something is a book he wrote about the influence of Christianity on the world, and all of the things that we value today simply would not exist. They do not exist anywhere apart from Christianity. And even Sigmund Freud, talking about, I mean, the death of God was like one of his things, but he talked about a lot of different things and about Christianity and faith. And I think there is some stuff that he's written where he's basically saying, you know, if you believe X, Y, Z, you're basically a Christian, because no other society in history ever thought this. They never thought it was self-evident that, you know, all people are created equal. You should take care of the poor. It's like, no. History is filled with societies where the strong eat the weak, period. So if you think that we should take care of people who are weak and poor and underprivileged and oppressed, and you're basically a Christian, because there is no other way to justify what you're saying. And that's something that Tim Keller brings up a lot in his sermons. He's now deceased, but he was also preaching in Manhattan, which was full of liberals, right? And here are all these liberal people, you know.
They're supposed to care about the poor.
Exactly. But at the same time, they're discarding Christianity, in Manhattan at least. And he's like, you realize you're intellectually inconsistent. Like you make no sense. You're not nearly as smart as you think you are. You know, you can't have both of those ideas without Christianity. So I'm just making the point again that the kingdom of heaven, the influence of heaven, is so powerful And so hiddenness is also something that's going on here. Like, you just don't see this happening. That it's so hidden that even people that hated Christianity are filling this big city with its ideas and presuppositions. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing influence. That's yeah. What names are, I'm not good with names, but he's a leading atheist biologist, and he recently admitted that the world he doesn't want to live in a world without Christianity.
Dawkins.
Yeah.
Dawkins. He said he's a cultural Christian, and it's all what I was just laying out.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to live in England or UK, London. I don't know exactly where he is, but he's in the UK. And there's a lot of Islamic influence that is causing major conflict there. And he was like, I'm a Christian because I'm British. And Britain is basically a Christian culture influenced by the ideals of Christianity, but I don't really want the whole Jesus part. Like, I don't want the actual, eternal cosmic implications of what we're talking about. I just like living in a world influenced by people that have been told they're supposed to love their neighbor as themselves.
It's a little picking and choosing there, huh?
Not, slaying people who don't convert. That's, I think, what was going on at the time. So, yeah, it's small. It's so small things.
And Dennis Prager he's Jewish, and he said the same thing. Not the same thing, but
I would rather be in a Christian.
Yeah, he said, I don't want to live in a world where there's no Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
I haven't heard his explanation, but I imagine it's along the lines of what you just said.
We need to be saying that a lot more, because we get a bad rap, and frankly, I'm just as guilty on both fronts. On the front of, hey, I'm an arrogant hypocrite who doesn't practice what I preach, Christian, because we all are. There aren't any other kind of Christian, by the way, if you're out there. But there's also not any other kind of human. But on the other side of that, I've also been very critical of Christianity. I mean, people ask me about church and Christianity, and if they've got a bad experience, or they tell me about some story with religious people, I say, I hate church people. I mean, I do. I hate church people more than you realize. And I deal with them all the time.
Church people, though, aren't the same as people in the church that come to church necessarily, right?
Yeah. So you can be in one group and not the other, and one group has both. Right. If that makes sense. Yeah. It's
a subset of the people that actually attend.
Yeah, well, that was the last parable, right? There's the weeds and the wheat, and you can't tell the difference, and they're both there, and right. So this. Yeah, I struggle with church people sometimes.
What do you think about the concept where people will say, "Well, you only believe Christianity, or you only grew up and joined a church is because that's the parents you've had or the place you live, and so on." Like, in other words, it's not really that it's all that big a deal, or there's not that much to it. It's just that's what you're around all the time. So that's, of course, you're going to be like that. But so,
well, there is something to be said about that.
But isn't that the point, that it's still around? Because if it was horrible, wouldn't we have discarded it at some point?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I don't know if they're. I mean, obviously, Judaism is probably the most persecuted. Jewish people are probably the most persecuted people. But they've tried to stamp out Christianity many times, all over the world. It has, well, not entirely, but it owned the Middle East and Africa, and there's stories of Thomas making it to India, possibly even China.
Wow.
And so what happened? People didn't like it. Or people in power didn't like it, or, like it became a thing that was a threat to the existing authority, which is what Jesus was, a threat to the existing order. And so, I talk about hating church people. Jesus hated, quote, church people, religious people, people that weren't necessarily they acted like God was on their team, but they were never really on God's team. They were on their own team, and they just wanted God to tell people that they had God on their side. And it's a mess, but that's not a reason to discard it, right? And yes, you grow up in some of these circumstances and you have parents, but then that's why you have to investigate it yourself. Like, you can't just have it spoon-fed to you forever. Like, there is a point where you have to own it. And I mean, I've been through that myself. That's partly why I'm a pastor, because I went through moments where I had to decide, is this really me? And do the Bible study and the intellectual gymnastics to figure out and
how does this actually work?
Kick the tires, and how do I make sense of this and integrate it fully into my life? Should I? Right? Can it stand up to scrutiny? And of course it can, if you want it to, or if you're at least open to it. If you don't want it to, it won't. But nothing else does. So, Tim Keller again, one of the things he says to people, or said to people, encountered a lot of skeptics. He encouraged them to doubt their doubts. So, you give all this scrutiny to Christianity. Have you ever once put your existing worldview through the same level of scrutiny, the same intense kind of analysis and skepticism to say, that's a really dumb idea. Doesn't make any sense.
How far, if I actually pursue this idea, where will it take me? Huh? Is it going to take me down the yellow brick road, or is it going to take me someplace else? I guess. Huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some ideas, some examples from his teaching, and like one example a lot of secular people will use is that well, I'm sure Christianity is good for you, just like Hinduism's good for this person, and Buddhism's good for that person, and Islam and Judaism and whatever. But really, we're all kind of like feeling around. We're blind people handling an elephant, and we just have different parts of the elephant. So this example that it's a big giant elephant, and here's one blind person, and they've got the ear, and this is God, and God is big and flat and flappy, like the ear of an elephant. This person's blind, but they've got the trunk of the elephant, right? They've got, oh my goodness, it's big and massive and sturdy and just, oh, good. And then another person's got one of the elephant's legs, another one's got the trunk, another one's got all these different pieces. And I see, everybody is just blind, and we're just feeling around. We got different parts of it. And then the response is like, well, the only way you would know that is if you believe you can see. And one of the biggest criticisms of Christianity or religion in general has been that truth claims are just about power and nobody really has truth and all that kind of stuff. And what he was saying is, like, if you were intellectually consistent, you would say, oh, wait, I just made a truth claim and I'm using it for power because I'm silencing Christians. I'm silencing other religious people and saying, well, you don't have it right. Nobody has it right. Only I have it right, although they don't say that. But that is what they're saying. They believe they can see and everybody else is blind. Mm. Or if you just say all truth claims are power claims, or, everybody's truth is true for them, you are making a truth claim. And your truth claim is being used to squash other truth claims. Like, you can't avoid it, right? So, like, you're just a hypocrite no matter what you do. So stop getting upset about hypocrites.
Pontius Pilate said that, what is the truth, right?
What is the truth? Yeah. What is truth? Wow, we can get off on that too. Like, what does he even mean?
Yeah, well, when you said that, I was like, oh, that sounds like a famous line. Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah. I remember that.
But that's the pursuit of truth is a difficult, challenging thing.
Well, there's people now, I mean, growing up or, or through life, it's like never really put that much into the fact that, truth is, or being able to speak, freedom of speech is such an important thing. So, it's the reason it's, I don't know if it's the reason it's number one in our government, but because if you can't speak freely, you can't speak the truth, right? Or even anything. And I think Jordan Peterson says something like, you speak, and when you speak, that's when your dumb ideas are sacrificed. Because if you say something dumb, somebody will let you know. Mm-hmm. So, it's a way of, I guess, so what is truth if you can't speak it? I guess. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, because truth is hard to, even Scripture or Christianity, Jesus, the way, the truth, the life, it's not always 100% clear cut. There's certain things that are kind of black and white. Jesus makes the case that it's him or not. Like, it's either him and you're in, or not him and you're out. He talks about a lot of other things, but it's also like, how do we apply it in our day-to-day lives? That's the thing. Like, what's the right thing to do in a given set of circumstances? That's why we have the Proverbs, right? But then you look at Proverbs. Did we talk about this last time a little bit?
Yeah. One will say one, and then
two. Yeah, it says, never answer a fool lest you fall into his folly. And then right after that, the same verse or the very next verse, it says, always answer a fool lest he, stay in his folly or others fall into it, or something like that. And it's like, wait a sec, what?
So the difference is the circumstances that
there. Yeah, wisdom is finding
when to apply the truth.
When the moral rules don't apply. And even the moral rules, like, don't lie. Well, what do you do when you have Anne Frank hiding out in your, behind the walls? Do you lie? There's lots of difficult.
These are not the droids you were
looking for. These are not the questions you're supposed to be asking. Yeah. Yeah. First, Matthew 13, and now something about the truth. Who knows? Yeah. Is this connected all to what we're talking about?
Well, when you going back, what you said about it being not a place, but an action or way you live, or that kind of thing. That's pretty. That that's good because, it's the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed. So, and then the mustard seed is the potential. So you do that little thing has a lot of potential to affect, have such an effect that birds will be gathering in its limbs at some point. It will grow. So, but it's not, why am I planting? If the kingdom of heaven is this place, why am I planting that? Yeah, it's not, that makes more sense because it's not something, you're not going to go grab a piece of New York and go plant it out in the country somewhere and then the city's going to sprawl up, right? Because it's not a place. It's not an essence of a place. It's,
it's subversively taking over. It's an influential movement of action and ideas, and it's hidden. It's in the ground. It's this little seed, and then all of a sudden, right? It's leaven that you put in, and looks like nothing, and then all of a sudden, and that I think is what makes us all frustrated as all hell by the kingdom of heaven, because we want it to be bigger, we want it to be more noticeable, and all that kind of stuff. But the good thing about it is that the kingdom of heaven is always at work. Just because you don't see it, that doesn't mean it's not.
Right.
And it's not necessarily evident until it is. So, I think
But you keep doing it, right?
You keep doing it.
Even though the evidence of it may not be at the moment or at the time.
Encouraging a kid.
What's the saying they used that when we were doing when we were going to build the school, we're planting trees whose shade we will not sit under, something like that. I'm not the person that was helping us with the capital campaign or whatever, the fundraiser for it. He used that, but that's really somebody else's famous phrase. But it says, you may be given this amount of money, and eventually, this will grow into building a school, and eventually, we'll have kids in the school, and you may never see any of that. You may just be given planting this little mustard seed, and then someday the school will be there, and then someday all these birds will be in the limbs of the tree, so.
And it'll just be, and
then you can
and
go
you
back
may be long gone, but the kingdom of heaven has got a new tree.
Yeah. And if you keep doing that, you have a forest, or you have a whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
But that's how it works. It's
so quit trying to do the big thing. Quit trying to hit the game-winning shot.
Yes. Yeah.
Quit trying to score a touchdown every time you touch the ball.
Or
hit a home run every time you're at bat. Just get a single. Out. Just get on base.
Get on base, yeah. And sometimes you just swing the bat and you get the home run. But not when you're trying to hit a home run.
Right.
Or when you're swinging a golf club. I don't know if you play
I don't play golf, but yeah.
Yeah.
I understand it's quite frustrating.
It's pretty miserable.
Someone that used to ask me if I play golf, and I said, no, I don't. And he says, what do you do for frustration? I was like, oh, okay.
So I don't really play golf, but I mean, I do have a set of golf clubs, and my one daughter and now my other daughter, we've gone and hit a bunch of balls with some clubs at a driving range, and they're learning, and I know I know enough to sort of help, but obviously at some point it's going to have to be somebody else if they really like this. Mm-hmm. And if you try to crush the ball, you will miss it and look like a fool. But if you just, you're just relaxed and everything, and you do fine, right? So it's that, not so much the little emphasis on the little part, but not swinging for the fences, right? It's not the big stuff. And we actually tried
Keep your
to
eye on the ball was something, that's like a little thing you do in baseball or tennis, anything
Yeah.
where you're trying to hit the ball. It's like a small thing you can do.
keep your eye here,
So that
not
you,
on all this other stuff.
yeah.
It's with our books, our kids' books, right? I mean, that was sort of, okay, Iceland. I mean, I guess Iceland sort of feels like a little bit of a big thing, but it's small. Iceland's the biggest small town in the world.
Mhm.
400,000 people on Iceland, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody's connected to everybody somehow. And then there's maybe double or triple that number of Icelanders living elsewhere. And they are all connected somehow. It's like this gigantic small town. That's the way I always think about it. So we're like, okay, well, it's small, literally 400,000 people. It's people we know. It's people I know. It's a place I could walk up and down the street and try and get the book into some bookstores. Think small, not like New York City where there's 10 million people and who knows how many other millions coming through it every year. That's aiming for the home run, the grand slam or whatever.
Mhm.
And then our next book we're working on right now, it's another small place, like not even 100,000 people, kind of small on this in this location. So I don't want to give it away. That's why
Yeah, no,
we got to tease it out. Starting small,
you have me in suspense now.
good, and hopefully everybody else who is going to buy the third book coming out sometime this summer. We hope.
Started thinking, okay, where is it? Where is it? Can I guess?
You probably could, but I'm not going to let you guess on air. I'm going to have to mute you.
Well, you
mute-
would never have to. You wouldn't have to tell me I was correct.
Yeah, but sometimes you
Give it away.
yeah.
No, it's not that.
Like I heard somebody, like a counselor or something, trying to, on a YouTube video, like explaining why I think it was actually about lying.
Mm.
Like, is it okay to lie? Yes, it's okay to lie, because if someone asks me, do I know John Smith? If I say yes, then they ask me, oh, well, do they come to you for, counseling? I was like, well, I can't really answer that. Now you've basically given it away. So what's the right answer? You say, I have no idea who you're talking about. That's the right answer. You're lying, but you're actually saying the right thing in this case, protecting confidentiality, whatever. Well, yeah. I don't know how we got back to that. But so if I get into this and you say, oh, this location, and I go,
I've never been there before.
yeah, if I don't answer it correctly, then I will have given it away without,
All right,
And
I
for-
won't guess on the air.
for our million listeners, we don't want
That's
to
right.
spoil this.
Somebody would bound to get it right. right?
We're on our way
Maybe
to
you
a
can
million.
have a contest. Can you guess where we're going? Did you do that last time? You had a contest last time, but I can't remember what all the questions were. But it wasn't like, where are we going? Did it? It might have.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, might be time for another contest. Well, at the point when you're ready to.
Yeah, well, there's like the storyboarding and the illustrations and the.
But you have to work on each page, right? The small things, right?
Yes.
You don't just write a book. You
Yeah.
write panel, especially your illustration. So you have to do panel by panel. Or
Eventually.
Page by page.
Yeah. And then it's so many people
Mm-hmm.
do not take seriously the little small things when it comes to writing.
Mm-hmm.
It is ridiculous how stupid people sound when they write things today when you try and read stuff. It's like, this doesn't even make any sense. And this is what AI is learning from.
I blame it on my thumbs.
I mean, in a text message, like that sort of makes sense. But I mean, like actual writing, like articles or papers, like, oh my goodness, it's so horrible. Just trying to, and you can't even texting. Well, even texting sometimes it does like these autocorrect things, and you're like, what in the world is that supposed to be? Like and you're just totally thrown off, and you just see how important little things can be. Mm-hmm. Are we going to start obsessing about all those little things? Probably not.
Jordan Peterson said in one of his first books, he rewrote each sentence like a dozen times or something in the course of writing the book. He wanted to get it just right. That's a little obsessive, I think. But I mean,
I think with
in some ways,
with our second book, I feel like we did that more, and we knew from the first book. The first book, when I go back and look at it, I go, there are a few things I would change. I don't necessarily have that with the second one, and it was the obsessing about little things. Mm-hmm. It's little things that I think help. Doesn't mean that it couldn't be better. Just means that
it's a skill, though, too.
Yeah,
maybe,
and discipline and patience and all that kind of stuff. So, what are some things that people could do? Little things like mustard seeds and leaven.
Spam.
We have a ghost in the studio.
I don't know. It made me think when we were talking about all that just now, and maybe this is going to take us off on something else, or maybe it won't make any sense at all, in which case it will be okay. But the story of the I'm drawing a blank now. What's the name of the story where the guy is injured and he gets robbed and he's in the ditch?
The Good Samaritan?
The Good Samaritan, right? So what's the little thing? All these guys came by and
they're thinking about the big flashy,
yeah.
I got to get to church. I got all those people that are going to be waiting for me. And
this guy just did the little thing.
Yeah.
And he didn't necessarily. And the thing I got about that recently, which kind of, I don't know if it convicted me or whatever, but it kind of like, there was somebody else that told the story, and I'm going to not remember where I heard this, but he was saying that someone come to him and said, can I have a guy on the street, can I have $1? And the guy goes, wow, why should I give you $1? What are you going to do with it? What if you do something? I was all concerned about him taking $1 and doing something evil with it. Right? He's going to go get another $1 and then he'll go buy something that's not good for him or whatever. All these thoughts. So it's like, no, I can't give you $1. And then he goes to the next guy, or he goes down the street a little bit, and there's another homeless guy, and he goes, can I have $1? And he says the homeless guy had a little bit of money that he had gotten, and he gives him, and he goes, oh, thank you. And, I think he went and bought something to eat or whatever with it. He goes, man, who am I? I got plenty of dollars in my pocket. I could have given the guy $1.
Yeah.
And here, the homeless guy, the little thing.
Yeah.
He just felt like, those are the things that this is making me think of. I guess maybe there's better examples than that, but I don't know. Because another example is you're always worried about. You hear all the stories on the news about there's the guy that's begging on the corner, and then the cops arrest him one day, and you find out he's driving a Mercedes that's hidden behind the billboard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why people just get, it's a mess.
But this guy said, no, just give him the $1.
Yeah. So slightly different perspective on the Good Samaritan. coming from the perspective of a preacher, who is it? The priest and the Levite, they walk by on the other side. Priest, Levite, both involved in the religious functioning of Israelite society, right? Jewish society. As a pastor, I totally get why people want to walk on the other side. It's just like, I don't have any more to give. I can't be burdened with another person's problem.
Not just another person.
Another person's
in
problem.
addition to all the other people's problems.
Exactly, because I was talking to a colleague, friend of mine, and forget the story, but he was telling me the story about a parishioner or somebody like just dropping this, like, oh my gosh, this happened to me, and he's like, oh my goodness, like it's a secondary PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Like if somebody you have a close relationship with has something bad happen, a traumatic thing or a stressful thing, whatever happened, and you try to be there for them, you end up getting a piece of what they are dealing with. It's just the way it is. You can't not have that happen. So he's telling me the story, and I can just imagine what he's dealing with, and then I'm sitting there getting like a third,
cut the piece of pie. You get a little piece of the pie.
So he got the secondary. I got the third.
Tertiary.
Tertiary, is that third, or just every additional one is tertiary after that, maybe? And so I could totally see the priest and the Levi being like, I got nothing left. I just don't. And I think there are a lot of people out there like that. I don't think it's just pastors.
Right.
And so kind of what I want to say and how I think this applies, this, thinking small.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to save everybody. You don't have to be everyone's hero.
Because that's going big again.
It's exactly.
Yeah, if you're going around trying to save everybody, then you're not working small.
And you can't physically, like you just aren't able. You weren't meant to. Jesus is the only one who was meant to save the world. You are just meant for whatever simple, stuff that crosses your path, or forget trying to save 100 people, but you're taking on one person or two people as like, okay, these are my people, and this is where I'm, pushing my effort for the kingdom of God, right? Mm-hmm. And, that's not to say that you shouldn't think about the person that God puts in front of you as you were walking,
right.
And you see the person in the ditch. You should be the Good Samaritan. But you can't do that if you have spread yourself so thin thinking big, right? Like if you've already burnt yourself out, then you're not available for the small things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where probably a lot of pastors find themselves.
Right.
There's a maybe it was a seminary or I forget where I heard this. I used it in a sermon, like one of my first sermons. I remember going through a lot to try to put this together, and it was a story. It was about the Good Samaritan. It was my first sermon at my home church. And I remember reading about this guy who was like preaching in a chapel at a seminary, or maybe it was like an experiment or something to a class, and on the way to the class, they planted a guy. And so all these seminarians who are studying to be pastors are heading to a class about some related, pastoral theology, practical theology, preaching, homiletics, or I don't know what it was. And then they're like, hey, you remember that guy you just ran past? That was a test. and just like totally outed all of them. Like, we just watched you run past it, and maybe there was like one guy who actually stopped, or nobody stopped. I don't remember, but yeah, we do that, and that was probably not good. But I also see the other side, and you don't have the capacity for those moments if you're trying too hard and thinking too big. And what were they thinking? They were thinking big, like, oh, I got to get an A. I got to get to the top of my class. I got to be the best. I got to get the biggest church and be the best preacher and, just influence millions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's this one person that if you do the right thing for them, if you help them in this time of need, it could end up having an impact that is exponentially greater than a sermon. Because I've been preaching sermons for a long time, and I can tell you that they aren't really all that powerful.
That you can change the world with a sermon every Sunday.
Can't change the world with a sermon. You simply cannot. Doesn't mean they're not helpful, but you can't change the world with a sermon. The world gets changed with lots more practical things by far less significant, in quotes, people that the world looks at as insignificant, but that actually in the kingdom of heaven are far more significant. Yeah, I'm not changing the world with sermons. Not doing it. It's just not the same thing. And I can just say that I'm not just speaking for me. This isn't like me beating up myself. Although sometimes I'm like, well, it's not changing the world. Why am I trying so hard? Like, what should I do instead? And I think I could say this for everybody, all preachers. Sermons aren't really changing the world. They're a lot of times in one ear, out the other, forgotten before the end of the day Sunday. And yet, thinking small, all of them collectively, little, insignificant, nobody remembers it by the end of the day Sunday, somehow it keeps the people going, God's people, like, I don't know. That just took a weird paradoxical turn as I was speaking and thinking about it as I'm talking. I'm like, well, there's that aspect to it too. All right, people are probably getting dizzy with all the whiplash back and forth. But, yeah, no, sermons don't change the world. But they sustain God's people who do. Maybe is a better way to say it. And God's people do little things here and there that mean the world to people. And then that changes the world. I don't know. Or they meet Jesus, and then through them, Jesus changes the world is probably the best way to think about it theologically. Anyway, you talked out yet?
Yes, I think I am.
Who's listened out? Anybody? All right, y'all. Think small. If you got an idea, think an idea on how to think small. If you got some insights, some ideas, you want to take issue with anything that we've talked about, let us know. Jesus is sweeter at gmail.com. Jesus is sweeter at gmail.com. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and check out these books here. This one, I was more obsessed about details than this one, although I was pretty obsessed about details. And then don't forget, me and my buddy Bruce, he was really, I thought I was obsessed about details, and then I started working with Bruce on this book, and he is way better at that than I am. And anyway, check it out. On Amazon, Open Arms, Connecting People to Jesus, Nobody's Nola, The Tales of Nola, Nola's Icelandic Adventure.
And new one to come.
The new one, Nola 3.
Just when you thought it was safe.
Just when you thought it was safe, yes.
There will be another adventure of Nola.
It's coming. It's coming.
It will be exciting. It will be thrilling. It will be to a place yet unknown.
So I can tease this. The word rescue appears in the title.
Whoa.
Nola's other words, rescue.
Very intriguing.
We're thinking small. We're giving you a little something here. We're thinking small again, just little bit by little bit. Add a book, and then we're going to take over the world and fund this ministry and
Or maybe,
fix the building.
Maybe just grow a little tree.
Just grow a little tree.
Or the biggest tree in our garden, I guess, maybe.
Hire some more staff.
That you'll have to spend your time trying to figure out what for them to do. This doesn't sound like a good plan yet.
Maybe not. I don't know. I didn't think all my ideas were great. They seemed great at the time, but all right, y'all. Before we digress further, taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter. The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, like a little leaven